There's a certain quiet that settles into the walls when you've been with someone long enough. It isn't love, exactly, more like routine or maybe memory. That's what I thought as I stood at the kitchen counter, rinsing out my coffee mug at 6 watching the sky outside shift from charcoal to pewter. Trenton always felt slow in the summer, like the heat wrapped around the sidewalks and pressed the city into stillness. But that morning, something pulsed beneath it. Not noise, not light, something invisible. A whisper, maybe a hint. I'm Dr. Daniel Alper, Denny to most, anesthesiologist at Capitol Health, 36 years old, and until that morning, I thought I knew the woman I'd married. Barbara, 35, smart, reserved, always 5 steps ahead. She worked as a lab tech at Princeton's chemistry department, the kind of job that stained her fingers with solutions and her hair with the scent of cedar shampoo. We'd met during residency, back when life still felt like a promise. She had a way of making things seem orderly, like if she just arranged enough beakers or balanced the right equations, the world would stay manageable. That steadiness drew me in. It calmed something raw in me, and for a long time it worked. That week, she said she was heading to Miami, a conference, something academic. She packed light, carried herself like someone bored of travel, kissed me on the cheek, and joked about not getting sunburned. I helped her call a cab, even wheeled her suitcase out to the curb. We waved like nothing had changed. But the next few days, I don't know, something about the silence didn't sit right. Her texts came late. Her check-ins were vague. No photos, no jokes, no little habits I come to expect. I figured it was just the stress of presenting or jet lag. I told myself not to read into it. Then Thursday night, around 11:12 p.m., I got the message. It wasn't signed. No greeting, no words. Just a screenshot. A hotel lobby in South Beach. The Fontainebleau, I recognized the tiles. 2 figures near the elevator bank, backlit by soft golden lights. One had her hand resting on the other's bicep. My chest went still before my mind could catch up. I tapped the screen, zoomed in. Barbara. Her green wrap dress. That silver necklace I gave her for our 5th anniversary. Laughing, caught mid-motion, head tilted back like I hadn't seen in months. And Cliff Harmon. I'd seen that bicep a dozen times at faculty picnics. In gym selfies Barbara would show me, teasing about how Cliff lifts more than he talks. He wasn't subtle. One of those guys who thinks charm is measured in protein grams. And now, apparently, conference invitations. I didn't move for a while. Just stared at the photo, then the darkness beyond the window. The street was empty. Just a breeze stirring the maple leaves and the soft buzz of a streetlight flickering above an empty sidewalk. I sat down at the table, the one Barbara and I refinished together during lockdown. We sanded it by hand. She picked the stain, walnut, not too shiny. There's a scratch on the left side for where she dropped the screwdriver, and we laughed about how it gave the wood character. Now, I ran my fingers over that same scratch, and it felt like a scar. I didn't call her, didn't even text. I saved the photo, put my phone down, stared at the chipped rim of my coffee mug. There was a time I would have rushed to explanations, filled the silence with logic, reason. Now I just let it be, let the silence stretch, like the hours before dawn when the world doesn't yet know what kind of day it'll be. She had lied to me, maybe not in words, but in absence. And lies like that, they don't echo. They sit, they gather weight. I poured the cold coffee down the sink, watched it swirl away, and thought, maybe I'm the last to know. Maybe I always was. And maybe, just maybe, the version of Barbara who stood in that hotel lobby wasn't coming back. Outside, the morning pushed through the blinds, pale and indifferent. The fridge hummed, the faucet dripped, and inside me, something that once trusted flickered, then went dark. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at that image from the Fontainebleau lobby like it might change if I looked long enough. My thumb hovered over the screen, flicking between gallery and browser, like some part of me needed to keep moving just to breathe. I'd seen betrayal before. In patients, in friends, hell, even in myself once or twice. But seeing it wear my wife's face? That was new. That was personal. And when something hits that close, you don't yell. You don't panic. You study it. You trace its outline, like a surgeon hunting for a tumor in the dark. You figure out where it started and how deep it goes. At 2:17 a.m., I opened Cliff's Instagram. No need for a burner account. He was careless. One of those guys who thought privacy was for people with less abs. His feed was a shrine to himself. Gym mirrors, beach angles, motivational quotes like earn your rest. I scrolled fast, skipping the comments. Then I found them. A set of stories posted earlier that day. First, a boomerang, Cliff in aviators, drink in hand, clinking glasses with someone out of frame. Second, a panning shot of the ocean from a rooftop infinity pool. And third, the one that stopped my breath, Barbara. In the background, wrapped in a striped towel, sunburned at the shoulders, laughing at something he said. Not camera ready, not posed, just comfortable. It was only 2 seconds, maybe 3, but I watched it 10 times. Watched the way she leaned into him, the way her mouth moved, the way her fingers reached for his forearm without thinking. That was muscle memory. That was intimacy, and it shattered something old in me. By 3 a.m., I'd logged into the guest portal for the Seta, the luxury spot Cliff had tagged in his post. My buddy Raphael down in Miami, an ER doc at Mount Sinai, helped me crack their reservation database. It didn't take much. A favor for a favor. I'd once walked him through a tough intubation over FaceTime. He owed me. Got it, he texted. Cliff Harmon. 5 nights. Ocean View Suite. Checked in with a Barbara Alper. You want the room number 2? I stared at the message. Room 541. Right above the pool deck. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. I pulled up my laptop, opened a new folder, named it Clarity, dragged the screenshots in, the hotel confirmation, the Instagram story, a screen grab from Google Maps showing the exact wing of the resort. Then, just for the poetry of it, I added a snapshot from our wedding, the one where Barbara was laughing, barefoot in her dress, red lipstick smudged on her teeth. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed to remember the contrast. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that something real had once existed between us. The apartment was dead quiet. Our cat, Maple, slept curled up on the arm of the couch, unaware that her little world was cracking at the edges. I got up, poured myself a bourbon. Neat. Let sit in my mouth like a truth I didn't want to swallow. I thought about sending the images to Barbara then, or calling, demanding an explanation. But explanations are for people who still believe the story can be saved. I didn't. Not anymore. Instead, I reached for something steadier. Family. Cindy, my sister, 4 years younger, 2 lifetimes tougher. She'd seen me through med school, our parents' divorce, a malpractice scare back in 18. She didn't flinch easily. Hey, I whispered into the phone when she picked up groggy. I need your help. Pack a bag. Denny, it's 3:30 in the morning. I know. We're going to Miami. There was a beat. Then, you bringing duct tape or forgiveness? Neither. Just eyes. By dawn, I had flights booked. Newark to Miami International. One way. I wasn't thinking past that. I didn't know if I wanted revenge or closure or just to see it for myself. The life she chose while pretending she still shared mine. But I knew this. I wouldn't confront Barbara with half a story. I'd gather every frame, every echo, every detail. And when I knocked on that hotel door, I wanted her to see that I hadn't just figured it out. I had receipts. I had time. And I had nothing left to lose. Miami hit different when you weren't there to relax. We landed just after noon, the heat rising off the sidewalk like it was trying to peel your skin. Cindy didn't talk much during the flight, just sipped ginger ale and glanced at me now and then like she was trying to figure out how deep this cut went. I didn't say much either. I was saving my breath for the moment it mattered. The setup looked exactly like the photos, minimalist, cool, unapologetically expensive. I could feel the hush of money in the marble lobby, hear the click of designer heels bouncing off glass walls. A woman behind the check-in desk smiled at us with a practiced calm, but I already knew we weren't here to stay. We were here to watch, to listen. We booked a room one floor down from Barbara and Cliff. Room 431. Close enough. Raphael's contact had confirmed they were still checked in. I tipped a bellhop $20 to tell me which way the elevator wing faced. A janitor in the hallway told me which rooms had balconies with pool views. With enough quiet questions, a picture started forming. And all of it pointed to one thing. They hadn't left yet. I stood on our balcony that night, a bourbon in one hand, my phone in the other, just staring at the 5th floor above. 2 stories up, second door from the left. Their room. Around 7:30, I heard them. Laughter, muffled but distinct. Barbara's voice. Cliff chuckle, louder, smug. The sound filtered through the concrete and glass like it didn't care who heard. Cindy stepped out next to me, barefoot, holding a pair of binoculars she'd picked up at the airport shop. Classy, she muttered. You want audio too? I can ask the front desk for wiretaps. I shook my head. Just need a confirmation. We waited. Lights flicked on in their suite. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Then the door opened, Cliff, shirtless, strutting onto the balcony with a wine bottle in hand. He called something over his shoulder, and Barbara stepped out beside him, barefoot too. She wore that sundress with the tie back. The one she swore made her feel like a student again. The one I'd bought her in New Hope. They laughed at something I couldn't hear. Then she leaned in, whispered something, and Cliff threw his head back and laughed. Hard, exaggerated. And that's when I heard it. Faint, but unmistakable. Denny would die if he saw this. My name. My life. The punchline. I stood perfectly still like my body hadn't yet caught up to the hit. Cindy didn't say a word. She just stared straight ahead, jaw tight. They were mocking me. Not just cheating, enjoying it. Performing it. Turning my name into something small and weak between sips of imported wine. I stepped back inside. Found my tripod. Set my phone. Focused it on the 5th floor balcony. I didn't zoom. Didn't need to. Just framed them against the warm light of a hotel suite I helped pay for with every overnight shift I pulled while Barbara said she was burned out. They kissed then, slow, theatrical. Her hands in his hair, his fingers sliding down her back like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I filmed all of it. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just for truth. The kind that doesn't need interpretation. The kind you can't talk your way out of. Then I turned to Cindy and said, let's get room service. It's going to be a long night. It's a strange thing, realizing you're not just betrayed, but erased. That someone you loved rewrote the story and left you out of it like you were never there to begin with. That's what I kept thinking the next morning, sitting on the hotel bed with the footage on loop. Their balcony kiss. Her laughter. His hands. Cindy was eating cold pancakes on the couch, scrolling through her phone with one finger and pure venom in her eyes. You sure you want to keep watching that? She asked. You already got what you need. I nodded. Yeah, but she's not the only one who deserves to know. That's when the idea hit. Sandra Harmon, Cliff's wife, local celebrity, morning anchor at WPKT Trenton, Channel 7. The polished voice of school closings and weather updates. The one Cliff always called high maintenance when Barbara wasn't around. I found her work email in less than 5 minutes. Public domain. But I didn't send the footage there. I wanted her to see it, to feel it. So I found a workaround, one of those studio-level Zoom webinar platforms. Raphael's brother worked in local news, owed him a favor. We set up a virtual interview request through a dummy university account, made it look academic, a fake panel on media ethics in the age of AI. Sent the invitation straight to Sandra's producer. And she accepted. I didn't even have to speak. Cindy ran the fake interview like a pro. Questions about journalistic integrity, deepfakes, personal brand protection. Sandra answered with perfect clarity, smiling like she always did on air. Then Cindy gave me the nod. Before we let you go, we just wanted your thoughts on something real quick. A short clip that's been making the rounds. She hit play. The video filled the screen. Their balcony. Her laughter. The kiss. My name. Sandra's face didn't change at first. Trained composure, media instincts. But then she blinked, leaned in, reached for her mouse like she wanted to pause it, but couldn't. Where did you get this? Cindy smiled politely. Do you recognize anyone? Sandra stared. Then she whispered, That's my husband. And the silence that followed wasn't dead air. It was combustion. The call ended a few minutes later, but not before Sandra made one thing clear. Thank you for showing me this. You just changed everything. An hour after that, her Instagram went dark. Her Twitter posted a single line. This morning, I learned the truth. My marriage is over. And the kicker? She broke the story on her own station that night. Right there, during the 6 o'clock rundown, wedged between a weather report and a missing dog segment. Infidelity isn't news, she said, but it is truth. And sometimes truth finds you in the most unexpected ways. Barbara and Cliff? They weren't watching, but I was. And for the first time in days, I smiled. By the next morning, the walls were closing in, just not on me. It started with whispers. A tweet from a Princeton undergrad, vague but loaded. When your chem lab queen and the gym bro get exposed by the evening news, yikes. Then another, a blurry photo of Cliff walking through the SETA lobby, head down, Barbara trailing behind in oversized sunglasses. Word was spreading, and I hadn't even made my move yet. But they knew. I could feel it in the way the hotel hallway went quiet when I passed their door. The way Barbara's voice, usually so controlled, cracked just slightly when she spotted me by the elevators. Denny, she'd said, like it was still her right to use my name. What are you? I didn't answer, just handed her the envelope. Inside were 2 printed pages. One for her, one for Cliff. Confession statements. Pre-written, clear, direct, legally unambiguous. Admitting to an extramarital affair, conducted during work hours and under false pretenses, affecting both personal and professional reputations. All they had to do was sign. If you want this to stay quiet, I said, voice low, if you want a chance to salvage anything, your jobs, your pensions, whatever's left of your dignity, you'll sign it and walk away. Barbara's hands shook as she read. Cliff tried to play defiant, but his eyes gave it away. He was calculating now, damage control mode. I knew that look. I'd seen it in thee, or when a surgeon nicked something they shouldn't have and prayed the bleeding would stop on its own. I left them alone with the papers. 30 minutes later, they were signed, scanned, time-stamped. Legal leverage, moral vindication, insurance for whatever storm might follow. But I wasn't done. That night, I scheduled a post. A short clip, spliced from the same balcony footage, with one new twist, subtitles. My name, her laugh, the wine, the words, Denny would die if he saw this. I posted it anonymously on a university subreddit, then tagged the Princeton faculty forum, then sent it quietly, cleanly, to the student newspaper. The reaction was immediate. Shock, outrage, students commenting things like, that's our TA, and I knew Cliff was shady, but damn. Parents flooded the admin hotline. Alumni threatened to pull donations. And faculty? They turned silent, which, in academia, is the sure sign that judgment is coming. Barbara texted me later, a single line, why are you doing this? I didn't respond, because the truth is, I wasn't doing this to her. I was doing it for me. For the nights, I stayed up rewriting her grant applications. For the lies, I swallowed whole. For the man she made small in her shadow, just so she could feel taller in someone else's arms. And because every betrayal has its echo, I just chose to play mine through a megaphone. You don't expect a video to go viral when you're the one bleeding in it. But sometimes the internet has a twisted sense of justice. By Monday morning, the clip had exploded. 2 million views. 500,000 comments. Local news picked it up again, not just Sandra's station this time, but Philly, Jersey City, even a morning podcast out of D.C. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a headline. Ivy affair, professor, coach, and the balcony betrayal. I watched it all from my kitchen in Trenton, the same place Barbara once danced barefoot after finishing a late shift. Now her name was trending, and not for the grants she chased or the papers she'd edited to death. No, she was that woman. The academic with the secret life. The viral fall. Cliff's gym shut down comments on their website. His sponsorship deals went dark within 48 hours. One protein company even released a statement. We value integrity both in and out of the gym. Barbara's department at Princeton held a faculty emergency meeting. Word slipped that she was placed on unpaid leave, pending review. Students started a petition, not against her, exactly, but against what they called the betrayal of public trust. And through it all, my inbox kept filling. Strangers, friends, former patients, people writing things like, "You spoke for all of us who stayed silent," and "I went through something like this, thank you." It wasn't about pity. It wasn't about revenge. It was about being heard. Finally, loud and clear, Cindy came over that night with takeout from Rossi's Bar and Grill, burgers, fries, a milkshake too thick to drink. She dropped her keys in a bowl by my front door like she used to when we were kids, back before Barbara even existed. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than I've been in a long time." She smirked. "You've gone full folk hero. There's a Reddit thread calling you the calm avenger." I laughed for real this time. Not because of the nickname, but because somehow, after everything, I still had that in me, the ability to laugh. At around 10, I walked out to my front porch. The air smelled like late summer, cut grass and warm pavement. A couple passed by on Mercer Street. The woman nudged the guy, whispered something. He looked at me, nodded. Not a word exchanged. Just that look. Respect. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a mirror for everyone who'd been lied to, everyone who'd rebuilt, everyone who'd lost something they thought was forever and survived anyway. Barbara and Cliff had built their little fantasy in secret, but I had built something too, a reputation, a voice, and it was only getting louder. The invitation came 2 days later, subject line, local spotlight, WPKT live interview request. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. They wanted me on air, not just a soundbite, a full 10-minute segment. On the resilience of character, the producer wrote, and the unexpected role of digital accountability in modern relationships. That's how they dressed it up. But we both knew what it really was, a follow-up to the storm I'd started. Cindy grinned when I told her. Better wear something with buttons. America's watching. We drove to the station in silence. The same building where Sandra had first aired the clip. She greeted me in the hallway, poised, professional, and strangely warm. I meant what I said. You know, she told me quietly. You didn't just out them. You reminded a lot of people that silence isn't strength. I nodded, not sure how to reply. I wasn't used to being the one on camera. Usually, I was behind the curtain, making sure someone else drifted off to sleep safe and sound. The lights were hot in the studio. I sat across from the host, a man named Jules with a salt and pepper beard and a voice like smooth gravel. We chatted off mic about the Sixers, about Trenton Summers, about bad coffee in hospital break rooms. And then, we went live. Tonight we're speaking with Dr. Daniel Alper. Jules began, a name now familiar to millions. Not for his medical expertise, but for his calm, methodical handling of a very public, personal betrayal. I took a breath. The camera light blinked red. It wasn't revenge, I said. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about showing that truth matters, that being quiet for the sake of appearances, it only protects the ones who lie. Jules leaned in. You became a symbol. Some call it heroic. Others calculated. What do you say to that? I smiled just slightly. It wasn't a calculation. It was a line, and I watched someone I love cross it, over and over, until I couldn't unsee it anymore. We talked for 10 minutes. About betrayal, about trust, about rebuilding. I didn't throw Barbara under the bus. I didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. When the interview aired that night, the response was overwhelming. Calls, emails, comments. But one stood out, A handwritten letter slipped into my hospital mailbox. It read, "I watched your segment with my teenage son. We both cried. Thank you for showing him that strength doesn't always mean fists or fury. Sometimes it means standing still while the world shakes and refusing to fall." I folded it carefully, put it in my desk drawer, right next to my medical license, because in that moment, they meant the same thing. It happened 1 week after the interview aired. Saturday night, rain tapping soft against the windows of my apartment. That slow, thoughtful kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller, quieter. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, making eggs I didn't really want, just filling the silence with something that smelled like routine. Then the knock came. 3 times. Not urgent, not hesitant either, just familiar. I knew before I opened the door. Barbara stood there in a blue coat, hood down, hair damp from the drizzle. No makeup, no jewelry, just her face, the same one I used to wake up beside, now weighed down by something heavy she couldn't name out loud. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't move, didn't open the door wider. Just looked at her, really looked for the first time in weeks. "I won't stay long," she added. I had to see you." I stepped aside, not to forgive, not to start again, just because part of me wanted to hear whatever version of the truth she'd finally decided to tell. She sat on the couch like a guest, didn't touch anything, kept her coat on. "I've been staying with my sister," she said, voice low. "They put me on administrative leave. Cliff's moved out. His wife froze the accounts. She trailed off. He's not who I thought he was." I nodded once. No sympathy, just acknowledgement. "I watched your interview," she continued. "All of it. You didn't lie. You didn't humiliate me. You just told the truth. And somehow that hurt more." I said nothing. Let her sit in it. "I'm not here to make excuses," she added. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I wanted you to know I think about it. Every day. How I broke something I didn't even know was holding me up until it collapsed." She looked around, at the photos still on the wall, the blanket folded the way she used to do it, the cat curled up on the window ledge like she never left. "I miss this," she whispered. "I miss you." I didn't flinch, didn't give her the grace of pretending that meant anything now. "You miss the version of me who didn't know," I said quietly. "That version's gone." She looked down, nodded, eyes red but dry. She didn't cry. I think she knew she didn't have that right anymore. She stood up, adjusted her coat, and before she left, she placed a small envelope on the coffee table. "My lawyer's number," she said, "and mine, if you ever need to talk." I didn't touch it, just waited until I heard the elevator doors close. Then I sat back down in the quiet apartment, rain still tapping, cat still dreaming, eggs untouched. And for the first time since it all began, I felt nothing at all. And that, in its own way, was peace. It's funny how quickly life starts to move again when you stop holding your breath. A month passed. Leaves began turning along the sidewalks in Trenton, and the air took on that crisp September edge. Not cold yet, but warning you it would be soon. The hospital was steady. Patients came and went. I slipped back into my scrubs like nothing had happened, though the nurses started calling me Hollywood with a smirk. I didn't mind. Then one Thursday afternoon, I got the email. Subject line, Fellowship and Research Opportunity, Seattle General. I almost deleted it. Thought it was spam, but it wasn't. They'd seen the interview, the story, and more importantly, the paper I co-authored 2 years ago on anesthesia depth tracking during thoracic surgery. Apparently someone had read it, really read it, and thought, this guy's more than a headline. The offer was clean, generous, a lead research role, teaching hours, a publishing contract attached, enough distance from Trenton to make the air feel new again. I told Cindy that night, over wine at Blue Danube Cafe. She didn't even blink. "Finally," she said, "you're not just moving on, you're moving up." The next morning, I signed the papers. I boxed up the apartment slowly, not out of nostalgia, just precision. I labeled everything, gave away the couch, donated the books, left the walls bare. The cat, Maple, seemed unfazed, like she'd already lived a dozen lives here and was ready for the next. And then came the final piece. I walked into my lawyer's office, handed over the envelope Barbara had left behind, and signed the divorce papers. Clean, direct, no theatrics, no courtroom, just a quiet end. She didn't contest anything, didn't stall. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to rewrite. On the way out, I left a single letter with her lawyer. No rai, no poetry, just a page with one truth. I would have forgiven you, not because you deserved it, but because I needed to. But the part of me that could have loved you again, you buried that in Miami. I mailed my change of address forms, set up new accounts, and the night before my flight, I sat on the floor of my empty living room, drank a beer out of a paper bag, and watched the sun go down over a city that had taught me both who I was and who I'd never be again. It didn't feel like running. It felt like arriving. The day I left Trenton, the sky was soft with overcast light, the kind that flattens everything into quiet, gentle outlines. There was no parade, no dramatic send-off. Just me, a rental car, 2 suitcases, and Maple in a carrier on the passenger seat. I didn't look back at the apartment when I locked the door. Didn't linger on the staircase where Barbara once sat half asleep, wrapped in my sweatshirt. I'd already walked through those memories in my mind too many times. And every time, they came back with missing pieces. I stopped by the hospital on my way out just to say goodbye. The nurses threw a card together, filled with inside jokes and half-legible handwriting. One of the residents hugged me so hard she knocked my stethoscope out of my coat pocket. And Dr. Reiner, the old cardiologist who never smiled, patted my shoulder and said, "You walked through fire and didn't burn. That's rare." By noon, I was on I-95, headed west. The further I drove, the lighter I felt, like every mile peeled off a layer I didn't know I was still wearing. Somewhere near Harrisburg, the tears came. Not loud, not violent, just silent salt on my cheeks as I gripped the wheel and let it wash through me. It wasn't grief. It wasn't joy either. It was release. Barbara never responded to my letter. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she read it in silence, the way I'd read her betrayal, with a clenched jaw and a quiet acceptance of what was already gone. I'd imagined once that we'd grow old together. Picture frames on the mantel. Vacations we'd laugh about in airports. Gray hair, shared blankets, quiet routines. But betrayal doesn't just break a future. It rewrites the past, turns the laughter into questions, the memories into illusions. And the hardest part? You don't even notice it until the damage is done. But here's what no one tells you. On the other side of heartbreak, there's room. Room for something stronger, cleaner, something you build for yourself. I reached Seattle just after dawn 2 days later. The air was different, saltier, cooler. People moved like they weren't rushing toward or away, just moving, living. And I stepped into that rhythm like I'd always belonged to it. The apartment was small, bright, overlooking the bay. The first night, I unpacked slowly. No pictures yet, no past, just space. I set Maple's bowl down by the window, opened a balcony door, and as the wind blew in off the water, I thought, this is what healing sounds like. No applause, no closure speech, just breath. And a man who knows who he is, because he remembered when it almost cost him everything. Daniel Alper didn't lose his marriage. He reclaimed himself.